exactly. Yeah, yeah.
It is that Percival was quite disappointed when he was actually appointed commander of the Malaysian Defense Forces.
Oh, of
He felt
course. It's
that
seen as an insult, basically, if you, yeah.
no, yeah, and he was saying that there's just two outcomes that's going to happen. One, I'm going to be because he knew the state of the army because Percival and Robert Brooke Popham, despite their bad rep for the defense of this region, they did try their level best to really start training and modernizing their army to whatever they could with the time that they had. But Percival felt that it's either going to be a really like backwater command. He's not going to get any action. It's just going to be a really quiet theater of operations that he's just going to get bored out of his life for the entire
Oh,
war. Or he's going to be facing a pretty strong enemy with really inexperienced troops and no real equipment to fight them back.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ooh,
Option
interesting.
number two. But as you're alluding to, also the British were overly confident as well, woefully unprepared for a confrontation with the Imperial Japanese Army, who had been specifically preparing for what they called jungle warfare in Malaya. Mind you, this was actually Tsuiji taking Japanese. I forget the name of the island they went to. They trained on an island that had semi-tropical climate. It wasn't exactly what they'd be facing in Malaya, but it was close enough because basically what they said is these veterans who've been fighting in China, the ones in southern China, sure, you could argue it's a little close to jungle warfare, but not really. It's not the same climate at all. So even the Japanese were not 100% prepared for what they'd be facing because this is these are banana plantations and stuff. It's a very specific, like where they're gathering rubber and that, very specific
It,
geography.
it's kind of like how ultimately General William Slim would command the British Army
Yeah,
in
exactly.
India because everyone else was focusing on artillery and tanks, which is possible in Europe and North Africa where you have a lot of open area.
Yeah.
But in the jungles, you cannot. And the infantryman is your champion. And
Yep.
that's what he focused on.
Knee motors, basically anything you can carry through the brush. That's what's going to be your main arsenal. And yeah, and yeah, the British. I mean, the British didn't have any sense of armor here either, but they wouldn't have expected a heavy use of armor from the Japanese. But unfortunately, it was Yamashita, and he heavily emphasized it when he wanted to do this campaign. But the IJ troops, as I said, they're battle hardened from years of conflict in China, so these are not greens. On the British side, they are certainly green. And Murray Leone's division appeared strong on paper, but it actually comprised only two regular British Army battalions, the Leicestershire Regiment and the East Surrey Regiment, which formed the division's core. The remainder consisted of four newly raised and poorly trained Indian Army battalions and three Gurkha battalions. Although the Gurkhas are absolutely renowned elite soldiers of the Commonwealth, these three battalions were primarily composed of 18-year-old recruits who had just recently arrived in Malaya. So, again,
You're
green.
just throwing kids into the battle.
But I would argue Gurkha kids, I wouldn't mess with them. It's
True,
like the
true. I
Captain
mean,
America.
Gurkhas,
Yeah.
everyone respects the Gurkhas, except a certain Wingate.
Yeah, the weirdest thing, eh? Like Wingate's just has this deal with Gurkhas. He was jealous of Gurkhas, that's why I didn't like them, basically. But yeah, they are the super soldiers of the world. And additionally, like all allied forces in Malaya, the 11th Indian Division lacked tanks, while the IGA would have plenty of them at their disposal. As much as people like to make fun of Japanese tanks, in this situation they would prove formidable. Murray sought permission from General Percival to withdraw from Jitra only after a few days of intense combat. He was so shocked and taken aback by the Japanese forces that he believed they were much larger than they actually were. Ironically, the Japanese were outnumbered 2-1. And before I carry on, actually, I have a map. I I'm sorry for the quality of this map, mind you, but this is a map of the action at Jitra. There does not exist any good maps on most of these Malayan battles. This is the best I could find, at least the one that had the most detail. So you can look at that. But as I was saying, the Japanese were actually outnumbered 2-1 in this engagement. Yamashita's military strategy aimed to keep the enemy off balance by employing blitzkrieg-like tactics. A significant aspect of his approach involved the use of fast-moving armored units and bicycles. And yeah, you heard that correctly.
Uh, I think I just want to reiterate this one point that we did discuss about General Yamashita.
Hmm.
because has traveled to Europe, like was in Austria for a few years
Hmm.
and spent pretty much the most of the at least half of the calendar year 1940 with Germany, even meeting Hitler. So
Yep.
he was there during the Battle of France, so he understood and saw firsthand the effectiveness of the Blitzkrieg tactic.
Hmm.
So that's why he was actually one of the proponents to use the bicycles to, for his men. And, it's actually a pretty good idea considering the Japanese never even landed with a single bicycle. They forcefully took it from every civilian and retailer or store.
Yep.
And because they had made a calculation that there will have been enough bicycles imported for their needs that they can just continuously borrow. And it is such a brilliant move if you really look at it. They are moving much faster than the retreating Indian army, causing utter confusion. And since the British Indian Army is going to go by the roads, right, like the
Hmm.
major roads, and even though they're destroying their equipment and retreating, which is just standard in a retreat, the bicycles are faster, and they can actually move way quicker through narrow jungle trails than an infantryman, or they can bypass roads, which obviously the trucks and all cannot do. So
And you can ford rivers.
exactly. They would actually like be just picking up the bicycle on their over their heads, crossing the river,
Yep.
then seating themselves and moving. And another underrated aspect was the fact that they could carry more supplies per soldier.
Yep.
The
It,
British Indian troops were, I think, they were burdened with at least 18 to 20 kilograms of equipment per person, and you could actually pretty much double it with the bicycles.
yeah, and unfortunately, it was actually our evil friend Suji. He was asked, because he was an intelligence officer, he was asked to look into what would be the best ways to move through Malaya. And it was Suji who realized everybody in Malaya owned a bicycle because of the specific road conditions and the way that the layout is of the geography. They have like these